Evening, everybody. It's 6:10 on Tuesday evening, and this is your closing comment. It is video number 1470. I asked this morning if we were going to have a dead cat bounce or a real rally, and I said that I thought that the market internals would really tell the story. And the futures, as I mentioned, had turned on a dime. And before the market opened, we were up 360 in the Dow and about 220 in the Nas and about $58 in the S&P. We got that opening, and after about an hour and a half, we were back in the red on the Dow, the S&P. Um, Nasdaq was still up a bit, and we spent most of the rest of the day on the downside. We had a little bit of a rally around 3 o'clock, but coming into the close, the only thing that moved up appreciably was the Nasdaq, and um, it was kind of interesting because the Russell was up $6 and change, or just under a 0.5%, and the Dow Jones transports were also up big, 1.28%, the big leader, up 153. But underneath, the market was not impressive. I mean, I'm looking at the sectors, and energy was up, financials were down, the food supply chain was mixed. Um, Pot was up, infrastructure was down. So it was kind of a up to mixed day in most of these markets. But that said, advanced declines were barely 1 to 1 and slightly to the positive on the NASDAQ, and barely 1 to 1 to the negative on the Dow. So, not very impressive day. Volume was lighter. Yesterday it was 4.7. Today it was 4.3. So, basically, we have a lot of stocks that have already made new lows for the year versus the June numbers. Um, but yet the indexes are very oversold and trying to rally. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. I'm not that sure. I think the market still has more to go on the downside, and the chart on the screen is the dollar, and that is the main reason. Um, Dennis always tells me that when the president is in trouble, the market is in trouble. And frankly, this president is in trouble. His inflation work is horrendous. He comes out and makes ridiculous statements. And his speech a couple of days ago at the in the General Assembly at the UN started off okay, and then it became, I did this, we did that, I'm going to do this, etc., and turned it into a 15-minute political ad. And you know, people see through that. We're getting more and more sophisticated in general with the tremendous amount of information that gets funneled to us through all of the sources. So bonds were down again, strongly down, and so the dollar was up. It was, let's see, yesterday's high was 114.44 and a half. Today's high was 114.42 and a half. So it was an inside day, slightly lower high, higher low, but we managed to close to the upside. And even though we've gone parabolic here, I mean, when you look at it on a weekly, it becomes a little more evident just how strong we've been. But going back to the daily, the MACD has again rolled back to the upside. and crossed over. So it's really hard to want to be short this. Yes, this is an area where there's a problem usually, but we've been here before. That really shows how parabolic. That's a 10-year. Here's the 20-year. And the maximum chart, which will be a monthly, shows that we have been higher. We have topped out here in 2001 at 121 and change, made a slightly lower high, 120 and a half, a couple of months later, and we had already come down from 129. So we could get up there, but there's really not a lot under this. This is basically because of the way that our interest rates are moving, and we're the reserve currency, and everybody else's currencies are getting pounded. So um, there's really not much more to say about it. But as long as we continue to see rates do this, they're up a little tonight, price wise, rates down, but they're up 10/32, which is the equivalent of 5/8 of a dollar. But today we were down 1 and 22/32, which is almost 1 and 3/4. So, down 1 and 3/4. Yesterday, down two. The day before we were slightly higher. The day before that we tried to go higher and finished down over two. I mean, we're through the bottom of the trend line here, the bottom of the channel. But I have no idea where we're going to stop as long as the government is selling paper that nobody wants to buy, except some of the foreigners, using their currencies, hurting their currencies, and making ours look that much stronger. So that's where we were at the end of the day. The oil was up $1.80. Gold was up higher this morning, but it only finishes up 280 on the day. Bitcoin was down 135, really nothing much there. As I said, the dollar was up, the bonds were down, nat gas was down a quarter. I have no idea why nat gas would be down, especially on a day where it looks like the Nord Stream 1 was sabotaged. I don't know whether it was Putin the thug trying to blame somebody else for it, but I mean, if there's not going to be supply, then it's a problem. I don't understand why it goes down here when in Europe it was up 5% today. So there you go. Tomorrow we have mortgage apps. By the way, mortgage rates now, the 30-year, 708, and that is 2.5 times what the rate was in January. Not only that, again, I'll tell you that I know that we're desensitized to these percentage moves, but the fact is, mortgage rates in 9.5 months going from 3 to 7 is a pretty extreme move. So, all right, so we have mortgage apps. I think we also have import and export prices, and I think that we also have inventories. So I'll be back in